I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you had an amazing day. All right, so today we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on pronouns and antecedents, right? So, pronouns and antecedents. And before we start with pronouns and antecedents, we are going to log in to aplusstudents.ca. And we're going to log in with our username as well as our password. And then we're going to select the subject of language arts. Right? So once we've selected the subject of language arts, we're going to grade 6 because this is the grade that we are focusing on today, grade 6. All right, so now we are within the different chapters, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to pronouns and antecedents. Once we have selected the chapter of pronouns and antecedents, the lesson focus or the focus lessons or the lessons that we will be focusing on today is to identify pronouns and their antecedents and to use the pronoun that agrees with the antecedents, right? So that is going to be our lessons for today. It is to identify pronouns and the antecedents, and it's to use the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent. All right, so we're gonna continue so long. We're gonna go into our pronoun and antecedents first. Identify pronouns and antecedents. So a pronoun, right? It is a word that takes a place or takes the place of a noun or a noun phrase. So a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun or it takes the place of a noun phrase, right? And the noun or the noun phrase that the pronoun refers to, we call that the antecedent, right? So once again, a pronoun is a word that takes a place or takes the place of a noun or the noun phrase, and the noun or the noun phrase that the pronoun refers to, right? It is called the antecedent. An example: Rachel is tired, even though she slept for 10 hours last night. So Rachel is tired, even though she slept for 10 hours last night. So the noun, right, which is Rachel, we call that the antecedent. So the noun, who in this case it's Rachel, we call that the antecedent, right? And the pronoun is she, because she tells us about Rachel, which is telling us about the noun. So instead of mentioning Rachel's name again, we just say she, right? Apparently, Tom and Sarah just landed. Who is picking them up? So which means that in this case also the noun phrase, which is Tom and Sarah, it is our antecedent, right? And it is the antecedent of the pronoun them. So them refers to Tom and Sarah, and them also being the pronouns, right? The next one. Surprisingly, my brother's basketball team won all of its games this season. So the noun phrase, which is my brother's basketball team, is our antecedent in the sentence. And the pronoun is its. Its is the pronouns, not it is, it's just its, because it's referring to the basketball team. Taking care of pets can be difficult, but it is quite worthwhile. So the noun phrase is taking care of pets, and that is the antecedent, and we have the pronoun, which is it. And it tells us about taking care of pets. And remember, in cases like this, the pronoun is basically just like we say, it takes the place of the noun or the noun phrase, right? And with the pronoun, it is basically so that we don't, or we basically avoid mentioning the name again or repeating the name again. For example, avoiding repeating the name again, we saying Rachel is tired, even though so we could have said Rachel slept for 10 hours last night. But we're not going to make mention of her name again or repeat the name. We just say words like she, it, so on and so on. So she, or we can say them, or we can say they, and so on. Right? All right. All right. So we need to select the pronoun whose antecedent is Julia Child. So we need to select the pronoun whose antecedent is Julia Child. Before becoming a cookbook author and TV host, Julia Child learned about French food while living in Paris with her husband Paul. So now we need to identify the pronoun, right, whose antecedent is Julia Child. The pronoun, right? So once again, it says before becoming a cookbook author and TV host, Julia Child learned about French food while living in Paris with her husband Paul. So now we need to select the pronoun whose antecedent is Julia Child. So Julia Child. All right. So now if we select the pronoun, right, that of the antecedent Julian Child, then we can say her. Right? So her, it is the pronoun of Julia Child. And if I read that sentence again, it says before becoming a cookbook author and TV host, Julia Child learned about French food while living in Paris with her husband Paul. Right? So her being the pronoun. Now we need to select the pronoun whose antecedent is James P. Johnson. James P. Johnson. During the Roaring Twenties, James P. Johnson was a popular jazz piano player, known as the of strides, father of stride piano. He played on more than 400 records. So he played on more than 400 records. So if we select the pronoun, then we can say it's he. All right, so he. So if we identify the pronoun, then we can say he. So he tells us, or it's basically taking the place, yeah, of James P. Johnson. So now we don't have to repeat his name again when we come to like close to the end of the sentence, right? We basically just say he, or if it's a woman, you say she. If it's more than one person, you say they. Or if you want to include yourself, also you can say we, right? Some people believe that the seasons are caused by Earth's distance from the sun, but they can't, but they aren't, right? Earth's Earth's tilt, Earth's tilt, not its distance from the sun determines the season. So some people believe that the seasons are caused by Earth's distance from the sun, but they aren't. Earth's tilt, not its distance from the sun, determines the season. So now, if we must select the pronoun whose antecedent is the season, the seasons, and then we can say they, right? So they is the pronoun whose antecedent is the seasons. So they is our pronoun and it replaces the noun phrase the seasons. All right, so now we're going to our test where we identify pronouns and their antecedents. We need to select the pronoun whose antecedent is John James Audubon. John James Audubon was a famous naturalist and artist who studied birds. In the 1820s, the printer Robert Havell helped him publish one of the finest books of bird drawing ever made. Sorry, ever made. So now, John James, right? We need to select the pronoun. We need to select the pronoun of John James, for example, whose antecedent is John James. All right. So if we choose the pronoun whose antecedent is John James, then we can say it is him, right? Because him refers to John James, which is also a male figure, because now they're giving us the option of him and her, right? And her refers to, let's say, a female or a woman, right? But in this case, him, it refers to him being John James Audubon. So that is our pronoun. The librarian and I searched everywhere for the missing dictionary, but we couldn't find it anyway. So we couldn't find it anyway. We need to select the pronoun whose antecedent is the librarian I. Is it he or is it we? He or we? So now we need to select the the in the pronoun whose antecedent is the librarian I, right? It's between he or we. So it cannot be he, right? Because they're saying the librarian and I, right? Which means that it is we, because it refers to two people, which is the librarian and I. So it is we. In the same 1700s, tobacco was valuable that it was used as currency in many American colonies. So in the 1700s, tobacco was so valuable that it was used as currency in many American colonies. So we need to select the correct answer. Is it being the pronoun or was being the pronoun, right? That refers to the tobacco. So if it refers to tobacco, and then we're going to say it is it, not was, it. And then your tongue does far more than just help you eat. It is also an important organ used in the production of your language. So, your tongue. We either need to select it or an. So, your tongue does far more than just help you eat. So, it or an. An is basically like an article. So, it. This was when, so it is, for example, it refers to the your tongue. So it takes the place of your tongue. The ancient Olympic Games began in Greece over 2,000 years ago. Unlike the modern games, they were always held in Olympia, and only men were allowed to participate in the event. So we either need to choose between were, and we need to choose between they, right? And select the pronoun whose antecedent is the ancient Olympic Games. All right, so we will say it is they. They. So select the pronoun whose antecedent is Julia Child. So before becoming a cookbook author and TV host, Julia Child learned about French food while living in Paris with her husband Paul. So if we were to identify or select the pronoun, then we will say her husband Paul. And her is correct. All right. So that was basically us identifying pronouns and their antecedents, right? So now we are going to use the pronouns that agrees with the antecedents, right? And before we do that, let us quickly go to the whiteboard. So once again, we said an antecedent, right? It is a noun to which pronouns refers, right? For example, we have Mr. Tickles normally did not eat fish without organic soy sauce, but he decided to make an exception, right? Which means that he is the pronoun within that sentence, right? So if we were to ask to which noun does the word he refer to, which is the our pronoun, then he refers to the antecedent, which is Mr. Tickles. The next one is, what are pronouns? Pronouns take the place of nouns. The the word or phrase replaced by a pronoun is called antecedent. And then also pronouns and antecedents, right? A pronoun must always agree with the antecedent. A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun, and an antecedent is the noun a pronoun is replacing. Now, what is an antecedent, right? For example, babies are cut when they giggle, right? They is a pronoun because babies is an antecedent. So the antecedent is the word the pronoun is about. It doesn't necessarily have to be, that. So the antecedent is the word that the pronoun is about, either mentioning somebody's name or that person and I. So now we're going to use the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent. So we need to complete the sentence with a pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold. So a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun or noun phrase. And the noun or the noun phrase the pronoun refers to is called the antecedent. And a pronoun must agree with its antecedent. We then have singular pronouns, right? And singular pronouns, it takes the place of singular nouns. And the singular pronouns include I, you, she, he, it, me, him, her, his, its, my, and your. So that is the singular pronoun, right? For example, Rachel is tired even though she slept for 10 hours last night, right? So Rachel is the antecedent, and the pronoun that agrees with its antecedent is she. Because, like we say, instead of mentioning Rachel's name again, we can say she. Surprisingly, my brother's basketball team won all of its games this season. So, my brother's basketball team, right? We are going to identify the pronoun as its, right? Its. And that refers to my brother's basketball team. And then we have, can you open this jar of pickles? I can't get it open, right? So if we select the antecedent, we will say it is jar or this jar of pickles. And then it being the pronoun. So that is basically singular pronouns. Now we are going on to plural pronouns, and this is referring to more than two people, right? So plural pronouns, it takes the place of a plural noun or of nouns joined by a conjunction, which is and, right? So plural pronouns include we, you, they, us, them, our, and to. All right. So we're going to do a few examples. My neighbors spent the weekend at the cabin in South Lake Tahoe. 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 So we need to select the person and the shoes. The person. So my neighbors spent the weekend at the cabin in South Lake. So my neighbors is the antecedent, right? And then when is the pronoun that tells us where. There is the pronoun which tells us about my neighbors. We are we are the cans of soup I just bought. They aren't in the cupboard. So the cans of soup is the antecedent and they are the pronoun. Then Izzy and I spent all day on our science project. If we identify the antecedent within that sentence, we would choose Stellenbosch, not Stellenbosch, sorry, Easy and I. Easy and I, right? And Easy and I is the antecedent of, is the antecedent, right? And the pronoun is they, our, is our. So Easy and I spent all our day on our science project, right? So Easy and I is the antecedent, and our is our pronoun, right? All right, so now we're going to complete the sentence with a pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold. In bold. So my wife and I is the antecedent in bold. We need to either underline, circle the example, the pronoun, right? So my wife and I found an antique cabinet that will be perfect in our dining room. The woman at that antique shop assured is it us that it's rare collections item, right? Which means that our pronoun is oopsie is so our is our pronoun and the antecedent is my wife and I. So we said, where is this word? Yeah. So we said our it is referring to my wife and I. So our refers to my wife and I. So the woman at the antique shop assured us that it's rare collector's item. Before food can be turned into fuel, must pass through the digestive system and be broken down into nutrients that the body can absorb. I think it is it must pass through. Yes, so it. So it is going to go in here. Let's see it. Yes. So before food can be turned into fuel, it must pass through the digestive system and be broken down into nutrients that the body can absorb. All right. Mary Curie won Mary Curie won Nobel Prizes in both physics and chemistry for, so we can say for her work on radiation and radioactivity. So Mary Curie won Nobel Prizes in both physics and chemistry for her work on radiation and radioactivity. Mm. All right, let's go to our test where we use the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent. So we need to complete now the sentence with the pronoun that agrees with the antecedent in bold. So Christopher and I is the antecedent in bold, right? So Christopher and I plan to vote for, is it our friend Mary in the city council election or me friend Mary in the city council election? So Christopher and I plan to vote for our friend, which is Mary. Mhm. Professor Santiago is an astronomer at the University of Chicago. She invites us to visit, is it her, and look through the telescope at the Yerkes Observatory, or she invites us to visit his. So his is not part of it because it doesn't make sense there. So we're going to say her. Pablo Sar- Pablo Sarasate became very wealthy as a famous violin player after his long career. He left most of his money to Pamplona, Spain, the town in which he grew up. Right? So we're going to say his. Mm-mm. So Milton Bradley didn't just create board games, right? His interest in learning made him a pioneer in the field. So it made him. So him being our pronoun. Philosopher John Dalton is credited with developing our modern theory about atoms. Dalton proposed that is it they make elements and combine to form chemical compounds or them. So we can say they and not them, right? And then although Walt Disney encountered financial problems with his first company, lawfograms. So lawfograms, we can say he went on a revolutionized how he went on a he went we can say he went on to revolutionize how cartoons were made. So revolutionized how cartoons were made. So he, which refers to the Walt what escape Harry escape artist Harry Houdini may have started his career in New York, but it was a tour of Europe that made him a star. So him. And then the element sulfur. The element sulfur is a yellow solid at room temperature. When burnt, however, it melts into a red liquid, or it's melts into a red liquid. We can say it melts into a red liquid. All right, so that is, now we're gonna go back and then let's quickly go to over here. So we're going to do at least one activity before we end off, right? All right, so now we said that pronouns and antecedents, right? And we said an antecedent is um, it is a way the pronoun must always agree with the antecedent, and the antecedent can either be a noun, which is either a name of a person, or it can be maybe the noun phrase, right? And then your pronoun needs to agree with the antecedent. So, say for example, they make mention of James, right? And then the pronoun must either mention him or he or so on. Because remember, we use the pronoun in place of the antecedent so that we don't have to repeat the word or repeat the name all the time, right? So, that is why the pronoun is there. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to fill the blanks with the right pronouns, right? And here it says, Tom is reading. Tom is reading. And we can say Tom is reading his own book because the book belongs to him. So Tom is reading his own book. I am playing with my unicorn, right? Sam drives. Sam drives car very fast. We can say Sam drives his car very fast because it belongs to him, belongs to Sam. Lily cuts her birthday cake. Sam and I ask our friends to play because now the our refers to Sam and I. So it's our friends, right? And then the students finish their assignments, right? Because it belongs to them. It's their. And it also refers to more than one person, right? Now we are going to check the best choice for each of the sentences, right? The girl walked down the hall and dropped. Do we say her book, his book, or our book? So the girl walked down the hall and we can say she dropped her book, right? Fred goes home and feeds his cat after school. So his cat after school. The children waved to, we can say their, because children is more than one. So the children waved to their teacher when they left the classroom. The rabbit wiggled, we can say its nose at me, right? And then my family likes to play games in our living room, right? Our living room, meaning it belongs to us. It belongs to us, right? So our living room. So that is pronouns, right? That we had to identify. And now, and remember the pronouns, the pronoun must agree with the noun, right, in the sentence. We need to select the correct pronoun from the word bank. It's he, it, their, they, she, mine, or both, right? Mark and Sue said they have to go to school on Friday. Bob thought that Bob thought that he could stay up until midnight. So he. That is not your car. It's mine. Meaning it belongs to me. The dog was sick and it wouldn't play fetch with me. Julie was going to the store when she fell off her bike because Julie is a girl. And Jason and Jamie asked their parents if they could have some money, right? So that is pronoun agreements. And remember, we said the pronoun must agree with the noun or, for example, a verb within a sentence, right? And that is pronouns and antecedents, right? And we said pronouns and antecedents. A pronoun must always agree with its antecedent. And a pronoun is a word that replaces a noun or a noun phrase. And the antecedent is the noun. Is the noun a pronoun is replacing. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson or our chapter lesson on pronoun and antecedents. And we identified pronouns and the antecedents, and we also used the pronouns that agrees with the antecedents, right? So grade sixes, that is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for joining the class. I really hope that you are going to have an amazing evening further. Good night.